You won't believe what I found. My hands trembled as I opened Danylo's laptop and saw this. A secret account with $6,250. My husband and I had lived by a separate budget agreement for 5 years. I paid for groceries and utilities, he covered rent and his manly expenses. No secrets, no surprises. But there it was, on the screen, a statement from a bank I didn't know about. Transfers to someone named Kateryna V. Who was she? A mistress? A business partner? The numbers flashed, and my heart pounded. Where did this money come from? Why didn't he tell me? I sat at the kitchen table, the laptop glowing, exposing his lie. The door slammed, Danylo was back. Late. Again. His keys clinked on the hallway table, his footsteps approaching. He walked in, saw the screen, and froze. Olena, it's not what you think. His voice quivered, but I saw fear in his eyes. Then explain, I replied, clenching my fists. He was silent, and in that moment, I knew, this wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal. Our rules, our life, our agreement, all a lie. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just stared at him, feeling anger ignite within me. Not pain, but cold determination. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing, I would uncover the truth. Every piece. And he would pay for it. My husband had broken our trust, and I couldn't forgive him. This was just the beginning, and I was ready to go all the way. I felt a strength awakening in me, one I hadn't known before. Danylo thought I was weak, but he was wrong. I started planning my moves, and the first step was gathering more evidence. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a system I would dismantle. Danylo and I got married 5 years ago. The separate budget was our idea, I thought it was fair and modern. I covered groceries, utilities, and small household expenses, while he paid for rent and his guy stuff, gadgets, clothes, nights out with friends. We agreed, big purchases would be discussed together. Transparency was our rule. But over the last 6 months, something changed. Danylo started staying late at work. Projects, Olena, you know how it is, he'd say, avoiding my gaze. I noticed small things, new shirts he couldn't have afforded before, an expensive watch that cost as much as my monthly salary. A bonus, he mumbled when I asked. But why not tell me up front? Anxiety stirred in my chest. He no longer complained about money shortages, as he used to. On the contrary, he seemed content, even smug. One evening, I saw him quickly hide his phone when I entered the room. Work, he said, but his smile was forced. I tried to brush off my suspicions. Maybe I was imagining things. But my gut screamed, something was wrong. I recalled how he dodged talks about finances, how he changed the subject when I suggested pooling savings for a vacation. His behavior shifted, he became distant, as if his mind was elsewhere. I started doubting our agreement. Was he really following the rules? I noticed he took the car more often for meetings but never said with whom. Once, I found a gas station receipt from the other side of town, a place he never went for work. The anxiety grew, but I didn't yet know how deep this lie ran. I felt it, this was just the tip of the iceberg, and I needed to dig deeper to understand what was happening. At first, I chalked it up to luck. Maybe Danylo really got a bonus. But why not share? We'd agreed, no secrets. I started paying attention to details. He grew more cautious, hiding his phone when I came near, lowering his voice during calls. Once, I saw a notification on his screen from a different bank, not our shared one. Technical error, he brushed it off, but I didn't buy it. His behavior changed. He stopped talking about work, stopped sharing plans. We used to laugh over little things, but now he was detached, as if his thoughts were elsewhere. I noticed he started staying late on Fridays, coming home with a scent of perfume I didn't recognize. Colleagues, he explained, but I sensed the lie. Anxiety turned into suspicion. I remembered how he used to scoff at the idea of secrets in marriage, yet now he was hiding something from me. I couldn't just ask, he'd dismiss it or accuse me of paranoia. I needed facts. I started tracking him, checking if his words matched reality, if he was really where he said. Every move seemed suspicious. Once, I found a restaurant receipt in his pocket, a place we'd never been to together. The amount was too high for a work meeting. I began noting inconsistencies, dates, times, places. His lies were becoming clear, but I didn't yet know how far they went. I felt he was hiding something big, and my intuition told me, this wasn't just an affair. It was something more serious, and I had to expose it. I knew, every step he took was a thread leading me to the truth. I began planning how to gather more evidence to unravel his secrets. My resolve grew, and I was ready to see it through. I decided to investigate. It was easier than I thought. Danylo left his laptop open after a shower, and I knew the password, our wedding date. In the work folder, I found what I was looking for, statements from another bank. A separate account. Transfers worth thousands of dollars. The name, Kateryna V. Who was she? A mistress? A partner? My hands shook as I photographed each document. I found a transaction history, regular transfers, starting last year. This wasn't a one-time error. It was a system. I recalled how he said he was moving money to a deposit when I asked about our savings. Lies. It was all lies. I closed the laptop, feeling anger mix with cold determination. I could have caused a scene, but what would that achieve? He'd make excuses, and I'd be left empty-handed. I needed evidence. I began planning, how to learn more, how to protect myself. I didn't know who Kateryna was, but I knew one thing. Danylo had broken our agreement. I wasn't going to be a victim. I photographed every document, saved them to a cloud he couldn't access. My actions were careful, precise. I started checking his other devices, searching for emails, documents. I knew, this was just the start. I needed more information, more facts. I couldn't let him slip away. I felt myself growing stronger with each piece of evidence. Danylo thought I hadn't noticed, but I was already a step ahead. My goal was clear, gather everything so he couldn't wriggle out. I began crafting a strategy to protect my interests and expose him. I could have stormed in yelling, but that would have changed nothing. So, I chose to act cautiously. I started tracking Danylo. I checked where he went after work, who he talked to. One evening, he said he was off to a client meeting. I called a taxi and followed him. His car stopped at a downtown cafe. I saw her, young, in an expensive coat, with perfect hair. They sat at a table, laughing, him holding her hand. My husband. My rules. Everything I believed in crumbled. I snapped photos through the window, feeling my heart tighten. But I didn't cry. I went home and started thinking. This wasn't just betrayal. It was something bigger. I recalled the statements, the transfers. Kateryna wasn't just a mistress. I had to find out what connected them. I began checking his things when he was in the shower. I found a plane ticket in his name, to Istanbul, from when he was on a business trip. I saved it, adding it to my evidence collection. My actions were cold, methodical. I knew, emotions wouldn't help. I needed facts. I started monitoring his schedule, noting when he stayed late. Each step brought me closer to the truth. I felt my anger turn into strength. Danylo had no idea how close I was to unraveling his secrets. This was a game, and I had to be smarter. I began planning how to use the evidence to fully expose him. I could have caused a scene at the cafe, but that would have been too easy. So, I dug deeper. I started checking his phone while he slept. I found a chat with Kateryna. We'll sort it out soon, just don't rush. Sort what out? I scrolled through their messages, feeling my blood run cold. They were planning something big. I found their photos in his cloud storage. A vacation in Turkey when he said he was on a business trip. I saved every piece of evidence, every message, every photo. My hands shook, but I stayed calm. I knew, this wasn't enough. I needed the full picture. I couldn't just walk away, that would mean leaving everything to him. I began checking his email, found letters from lawyers, contracts. Kateryna's name was there. She wasn't just a mistress but a business partner. I saved everything, building a digital archive of his lies. My actions were cold, methodical. I knew he didn't suspect how far I'd gone. I started checking his banking apps, looking for other accounts. Each new piece of evidence boosted my confidence. I couldn't let emotions take over. My goal was clear: gather everything so he couldn't escape. I felt myself growing stronger with each step. Danylo thought I was weak, but I was 2 steps ahead. I began planning how to use this evidence to ruin his plans and protect myself. I could have gone to a lawyer, but I wanted to know everything first. So, I hired a private investigator. Within a week, he delivered a report. Kateryna wasn't just a mistress. She and Danylo were running a startup, a small business he was funding. The money, our savings. The ones he said he was putting in a deposit. He'd been lying to me for years, funneling our dollars into her account. I read the report, each line hitting like a blow. But I didn't break. I clenched my fists, planning my next move. The tension was mounting, but I kept myself in check. The investigator found documents. Danylo signed contracts using our joint funds. I knew he didn't expect me to fight back. He thought I was weak. But I was ready. I compiled all the evidence, organized it into a folder. My actions were precise, like chess moves. I began consulting a financial expert to understand how to protect my assets. Every step was calculated. I couldn't let emotions take over. This was war, and I was preparing for the decisive strike. I knew Danylo had no idea how far I'd gone. My strength grew daily, and I was ready for the endgame. I started planning how to use the evidence to make him pay for his lies. I knew my actions would be devastating, and I was prepared for it. I could have just left, but that would have meant giving up. So, I devised a plan. I met with a financial consultant to secure my assets. I transferred my share of the savings to a new account. I gathered all the evidence, statements, photos, the investigator's report. I knew Danylo didn't suspect my actions. He thought I was clueless. I was preparing for the final blow, and each step made me stronger. I hired a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. We crafted a strategy, a lawsuit for fraud, divorce, asset division. I knew he wasn't ready for this. His arrogance was his weakness. I acted quietly, discreetly, but every move was precise. I began studying laws to know my rights. My actions were cold, methodical. I couldn't let him slip away. I knew he saw me as a victim, but I was now a player. Each piece of evidence, each document brought me closer to victory. I started planning a new life, imagining my freedom. Danylo didn't suspect I was preparing a strike that would shatter his world. My strength grew, and I was ready for the finale. I knew this wasn't just a divorce, it was retribution. I was ready to use all my resources to make him pay for his lies. I no longer felt like a victim. Each piece of evidence, each step fueled my confidence. I changed my hairstyle, updated my wardrobe, enrolled in financial literacy courses. I was learning to protect myself, to plan, to act. Danylo didn't notice, he was too busy with Kateryna and his business. I was preparing for war, not a tantrum. I became someone else, no longer a scared wife but a strategist who knew what she wanted. My actions were cold and precise. I studied laws, consulted experts, built a new life. I knew he wasn't ready for what I'd do. My transformation wasn't just external, I changed inside. I no longer depended on him, no longer feared being alone. I began envisioning my future, a new career, new goals. Each day, I grew stronger, more confident. I knew Danylo had no idea how much I'd changed. My plans were clear, my actions precise. I was preparing for the final strike that would destroy his lies. I wasn't the Olena who trusted him anymore. I was a new version of myself, strong, independent, ready to fight. My strength grew, and I knew I would win. I started planning my future, knowing it would be mine. I placed a folder of evidence on the table, statements, photos, the investigator's report. "Explain," I said, looking him in the eyes. He tried to make excuses, but I cut him off. "I'm filing for divorce. And you're facing a fraud lawsuit." His face went pale. I walked out of the apartment, leaving him with the papers. The next day, I met with my lawyer. We filed the lawsuit, and the court ruled Danylo's actions as fraudulent. He lost his business, his reputation, and most of his money. I got my share of the assets and savings in dollars. I started a new life, mine, on my terms. I was no longer a victim. I was free. I moved to a new apartment, began working on my own projects. My strength grew daily, and I knew I did the right thing. Danylo thought I was weak, but I proved him wrong. My actions were precise, my plans flawless. I didn't just survive, I triumphed. Every step, every piece of evidence led me to this moment. I stood on the threshold of a new life, and nothing could stop me. I was ready for the future I'd built myself. My victory was not just over Danylo but over my own fears.